Hello there, my name is Ragnon. I'm the raid leader for the Clear Comms team of Mist Guild on Illidan, and this is a quick overview of Vault of the Incarnates. I'm going over all the fights using mythictrap.com. This is kind of a summary, all-in-one packaged resource. The plan is to use this for my team, but I'm sharing it, and if you find it helpful, feel free to share it with somebody else. So let's get started. Also, I'm going to be, I have typed this all up in a big study guide if you prefer reading. Each different fight does have a TLDR, so just a quick summary that you can have on a second monitor or something before you start a fight, just to hit all the key points. So let's start off with the first boss, Eranog. So for Eranog, the TLDR, the summary is there's going to be some dark puddles that you don't want to stand in. There's going to be lots of red circles that are marked on players, and you're going to run them to a section of the room, kind of like Lahuvim moats. The boss has a frontal cone that you'll need to dodge, and then at some point there is a walking wall of ads that you need to kill one in order to clear a path. So here's what the mechanics look like. In the first phase, you're fighting the boss. The boss will be tanked kind of centrally, and will drop the red circles off to the side. So you can see right here, these are what the pillars look like. They spawn as dark pools and then erupt afterwards, so don't stand in those. When the boss roars, all of the spikes will explode into lines. Just dodge the swirlies and heal through the damage there. This is the red circle. You can see it spawns ads and leaves a pool. So we'll be running those off to the side, and the off tank will go as well, and we'll pick up the ads. So we're trying not to fill up too much of the room randomly. We're going to drop them in designated spots, running them off to the right, kind of like with Lahuvim. You can see this here is his frontal, so when he's casting that, just move out of the way. And then the tanks, you swap on 2 stacks of the Burning Wound dot. On phase 2, boss is going to become immune. He'll run to the center, and he'll spawn a big old wall of ads. You just kill one and walk your way out, kind of like Shadow Moon Burial Grounds. Don't touch the ring, otherwise you die. And the raid will take quite a bit of damage during that phase, so that's a bit of a heal check. What kills you is touching the beams. So pretty straightforward boss. Let's move on to the second one, Terros. I'm nicknaming this one Skull-X 2.0. It's very similar to Skull-X. So there's only one phase, excuse me. The TLDR is we're going to stand in the center as much as possible to bait the big puddles, the big circles that he'll cast. And then there's 2 different other mechanics. There's one where it's a soak circle, and that gets run off to the right. And then there's players that are marked with small circles, and those will spawn spikes. Those are run off to the left, and I'll show that in just a second. So the first... right here, this is the soak that I was talking about. That'll be run off to the right. Anyone who's not marked with the spikes needs to run off to the right and help soak. The second mechanic are these small circles that happen simultaneously with the soak circle. So you'll run this off to the left and drop them in a line as much as possible. The tanks get marked with like a Halandris beam, very similar to a Halandris beam, cast out from the boss, and the tank will use that to detonate the spikes. The spikes that are still active will radiate damage to the whole raid, so we want to be able to pop as many as possible, so it is important that they're dropped in a straight line. So that's the beam I was talking about. This is what I was talking about, where we're trying to bait the circle. We'll stand centrally, and we'll try to bait the shattering impact. So you see he targets a general area where most of the raid is, and then we move out, and it leaves a permanent zone that can't be... it doesn't. On Heroic, it leaves a puddle that you can't go in again, deals damage. So the room is going to fill up with stuff similar to Skull-X. At 100 energy, he consumes a section of the room, very similar to Dathria's pizza sauce. So the enrage mechanic is when you run out of room. So there's 4 pie slices that he'll cast. So we'll bait it off to the... I feel like we'll honestly probably go the opposite of this. We'll go counterclockwise. That just feels more intuitive to me. So we'll work that way, unless something goes weird. And then let's see here. There's random swirlies that get marked on players, and it drops pools. So we want to be standing. As you can see, the range is standing as stacked as possible to bait the swirlies. Very similar to Zymox traps. We're just trying to have the ranged and the melee stand as grouped as possible to bait stuff. So here's the big thing that can kill you in this fight. It really comes down to the soaks and the pillars. So the soaks are going to move off to the right. I guess from your view, it's the right. And the pillars are going to move off to the left. So the soak, you can see right here, moves off to the right. And there's some people that have pillars, and they kind of, it gets all mixed up. So we'll handle that kind of similar to maybe like the spacing on the Dark Recital in Castle Nathria. So if you have the soak, you move off to the right, and if you're marked with the individual circles, you move off to the left. So that is Terros. Let's move on to Sennarth. Sennarth is the spider boss. I'm really looking forward to this one. It looks like a lot of fun. Let me pull up the TLDR for this one real quick. Okay, so the TLDR, you want to avoid standing in webs most of the time. There's 2 moments where you want to be using the webs. Anytime there's spiderlings, you want to kill those on cocooned players that are stunned, or the webs, and it will clear them with the explosion from the spiderlings. Through all of the platforms up until the last one, you want to be either as far away from the boss or be standing on the far side or inside of a web puddle when he uses his pull, which is called Gossamer Burst. So again, you can stand on the outside of the web and it will pull you in, or you can just stand in the web, but you'll be accruing stacks of the debuff while you're waiting for him to finish casting. Ads are always the priority when the big spider ad. On the last platform, it's not a pull. He doesn't pull, he pushes. So it's the opposite. You want to be on the inside of the webs or as close to the boss as possible so you don't get blown off the top platform. All right, so let's go through this. So he'll randomly target players and they'll get marked with webs. It'll call it out on DBM or bigwigs, and you'll just drop stacks of webs. So try to avoid standing in webs as much as possible because you will, if you get enough stacks, you get 10 stacks, you get stunned for 30 seconds. And the only way to clear you is to either wait out the 30 seconds or to kill a spiderling on top of you so they explode. You can see here, this is what the spiderling death looks like when they die. They drop a green swirly, and that clears webs or cocooned players. Gossamer Burst, this is the big mechanic. So he'll channel Gossamer Burst. When this finishes, he's going to suck everybody in towards him. And if you're not either as far away as possible against the wall or standing on the outside of a web puddle, you can see right here, this player is on the outside of a web puddle, and he gets pulled into the web puddle, and it reduces his movement speed so he doesn't get ripped off the edge. Okay, so you want to be positioned correctly by the time this channel finishes. It's a 4-second cast. So that's the big mechanic of this fight for all the platforms. Chilling Blast, just basic spread mechanic. You can just spread out. Doesn't leave a puddle or anything. Breath of Ice, so this is more swirlies. It will target players, and it will leave behind ice patches, which damage and make you slide. Freezing Breath, so this is on the spider ad. The spider ad is top prio because the longer that he's up, he deals more and more damage, and eventually he'll just start one-shotting the tank. So he will do a frontal, so while you're killing him, just be aware of the positioning of him. It does target a random player, so the boss can't control the direction of that. Everybody needs to be aware of where that is facing when he casts it. Let's see here. A Web Blast is the taunt swap, so you swap every about 8 or 9 stacks or when the debuff falls off. Phase 2, so this is when you get up onto the top platform. So at the very top, it's slippery. The whole platform is slippery the whole time. And the circles now have an extra component. So now, instead of just being a basic spread, they'll also leave a swirly right after that, a plume. And so that just adds an extra mechanic to that. And you can see it leaves a little plume, a little moat thing on the ground that you'll have to watch out for. Webs, it's very similar to Phase 1, but now when you're marked with the webs, you will then be cocooned. So you need after a knockback. So you need to be careful. You can see right here these webbed players. As soon as the cast finishes, they get knocked back and then cocooned. So you need to make sure that you are prepared to be knocked back on the long ways of the platform. If you get knocked like this player, if he was a little further over to the left, he would have got knocked back and cocooned off the edge. So be very careful on your position if you're webbed on the last platform. Also, try to not get knocked into these plumes because you will take extra damage as well. Webs. So opposite of Gossamer Burst, instead of sucking you in, he will knock you back. So you want to position yourself either very, very close to the boss like this, or on the inside of a web puddle. So you can see that player that was highlighted was standing on the inside of a web, and he immediately stopped. And then these players were standing as close as possible, so they got knocked back in a safe direction. The spiderlings on the top will break the cocoon, so kill those on stunned players. And that is the gist of it. Really, the most difficult part of this fight is not just going to be paying attention to your positioning so that you don't get either sucked or blown off of the edge. So that's Sennarth. Let's move on to Primal Council. So Primal Council is the obligatory council fight in this raid. And so each of the bosses has a signature ability. They represent a different element, and go figure, each of their ability counters one of the other boss's abilities, which is pretty nice. The TLDR for this is there's going to be blue circles. Don't touch other players, otherwise it spreads and refreshes the duration. You get rid of it by touching an earth pillar. There's going to be 2 big red circles, and you use that to destroy the pillars. So you position them on the pillars, and that will clear them. And then also, simultaneously, any raider that doesn't have another mechanic on them needs to help soak so that you don't die. It's shared damage. When he's doing the blizzard stacks, you just touch the fire pool to clear the stacks. There's frontal cones you have to watch out for, and then you want to kill them evenly, kind of like Pantheon, prototype Pantheon. So let's go over the boss fight here. There's only one phase. It's just all the stuff at the same time. So Earth and Pillar, these swirlies will be cast on players, and it will do a big knock-up, and they deal ticking damage just like Terros. While they're up, they're ticking damage on the entire raid. Conductive Mark, this is the blue circles, so when you get marked with these blue circles, don't touch another player if you can avoid it, because it will refresh the duration on both of you, and it'll spread to any player that doesn't have it. So you can see right here, he just ran up to a pillar, hugged it for a little bit, and it went away. So that's how you clear that. Meteor axes, this is the fire circle that I was talking about. So you run these and position them so that they break as many of the earthen spikes as possible. And the rest of the raid needs to get in one of the circles to help share the damage. Do not stand in both circles, otherwise you will die. So no overlap. Primal Blizzard, so the ice dude will cast a stacking debuff on you. If you reach 10 stacks, you'll get frozen and stunned. But if you step into a fire pool during this, it will clear them off, and you'll be fine. So you can see right here, the players that are frozen, they'll have to get broken out by other players damaging them. So just step in to clear stacks during Blizzard. There's a frontal by, let's see here. What's the name of the frontal? Embar. It's Slashing Blaze right here. So at 100 energy, he does a frontal cone towards the active tank. So be watching out for that. And the big thing that can kill you here is just not paying attention to your positioning and accidentally standing in 2 of the fire circles at the same time. If you're standing in that overlap, you will die. Next fight, Dathea. So this is the big old tornado. So this is the TLDR for this is there's going to be blue circles just like the previous fight, but instead of touching a pillar to get rid of it, you just spread out. It's very similar to like Painsmith chains. You just stay away from the group, and then eventually it will fall off. So that's how you manage the blue circles. There's going to be tornadoes that dodge. And they move kind of like Mechagon, the last boss in Mechagon Workshop. You know how there's like arrows and then a final destination? You can see where the tornadoes are going to move. They periodically jump across the platform. He'll suck you in, fight the suck, And then there's a big ad that when he dies, he'll do a big knockback, and you use that, similar to Mythic Zymox, to go over to another platform to kill ads. And you'll split into 2 different groups to do this. So I'll show you that as we get to it. So first of all, the blue circles, these are the Painsmith chains. You need to move away and just wait until it falls off. These players are going to take big damage, so healers need to watch out for them, and then they just need to stay away from everybody else. Crosswinds, so these are the tornadoes. They do what you think tornadoes might do. They knock you up and they deal damage, and you can see there they move. They will have an area marked where they're going to move, and they have arrows showing which direction they're going to go, just like the last boss of Mechagon Workshop. Cyclone, so this is the big suck that I was talking about. While he's casting that, you run away. If you get sucked in, you'll get knocked up, and you will take a lot of damage. Zephyr Slam, so this is the taunt swap for the tank. So the active tank will just get blown back almost off the edge of the platform, and at that point the other tank needs to take over. It's a swap at 3 stacks, I guess, apparently. I thought it was 1. So swap at 3 stacks. Coalescing Storm, so as soon as the boss reaches 100 energy, he'll spawn a big ad. So you'll see right here, this is what the big ad looks like. And when that ad dies, he will trigger a knockback on everybody in the raid. So one of the groups will be positioned just like these guys are, and they'll take the knock over to this opposite platform. On this platform, there's another big ad. That ad needs to be tanked. So in the group going across, there needs to be healers, and there also needs to be a tank, as well as half of the DPS. So you'll get knocked back. Be careful. Be careful of your positioning, because if you're not paying attention when the big ad dies, you will get blown off the edge in a random direction, and you will not end up on the platform that you need to. There's a mechanic in this to where you take increasing damage the longer that you stay on a platform, and so that's why we're split into 2 groups, and we trade who goes over each time to kind of reset that debuff. You kick the dude, kick the ads. So the big thing that'll kill you in this is getting blown off. So when the big ad dies, every player will get knocked, and so if you're not paying attention, you'll be like this guy here, and you'll get blown into oblivion. That's Dathea. Let's take a look at Kurog. This is just mechanic vomit. He's just all the elements. He's Captain Azeroth. So with this, the TLDR, there's really not a TLDR. I have it on the document here. Really, it's just you need to move him to 2 different altars in each phase 1. And then each altar has a different thing that it empowers him with. And also during the phase 2, it'll spawn an ad that is matched with that altar, and they also have something. So in this fight, you have to memorize what each altar empowers the boss to do, and what each type of ad from that altar does. So let's go over phase 1. So phase 1 is where you're tanking the boss at each altar, and you'll pick 2 altars for each phase 1. So real quick, this is the taunt swap, the tank mechanic. He'll target the active tank with a big old smoky white cone. The active tank needs to stand still because I believe it follows you. You can't sidestep out of it. So you'll just take the knockback, and then the other tank will go ahead and take over at that point. And that's after each cast. Molten Rupture. So let's go over the Altar of Flame first. So the TLDR of the Flame Altar is it's just lots of stuff to dodge. So lots of fire, lots of swirlies, lots of pools. So he will cast out these plus sign patterns from him. He will also trigger damage on the players. So you can see here they're baiting in the corner, and it will leave a fire pool. So range needs to stay on the edge for Magma Burst to try to bait these swirlies as much as possible. He will also debuff some players, and they'll progressively leave swirlies as they move, kind of like, I'm spacing what the name is, but you know, Stone Legion generals, when you have the spike swirlies that follow you as you run, it's similar to that, only it leaves permanent puddles, fire puddles as well. So that's it. Oh no, they're not permanent. Sorry, there's no fire puddles with that. The fire puddles come from magma burst. Okay, so lots of stuff to dodge on the fire. Frost. Frost is dodging projectiles and then soaking a circle. So you can see right here, he shoots out projectiles from him. If you're melee, it's really easy to get hit by these. You can see this little spiky ball on the side of him that'll show where it will come out from. So if you're paying attention to that, you can min-max and step in between them. If you are worried that you're going to get hit by this and hit by this stun and stuff, you can just melee scoot back just a little bit, and then you can see them a little bit better, and you'll have some more time to react. Absolute Zero. So this is the soak. It's very similar to the Jailer soak. So there's 2 different soak circles. Everybody in the raid needs to get in one of them, but not both. Don't stand in the overlap. That seems to be a running theme. Okay, the Stone Altar. So this has some stolen mechanics. This is very similar to, I forget the name of the boss, in Halls of Infusion, the Ice Mage chick. It's just bullseye circles that move out. So the way that you dodge this, the first one will be directly on him, move out, and then you can move in. So you never want to be in the brown because it will explode. So always be where the brown is not. So after it moves, you step in so that you're out of the way of future rings. Seismic Rupture. So these are swirlies, and these spawn adds. So players need to group to bait the swirlies, kind of loosely clumped together, not tightly stacked. And then after the swirlies are set, they need to move away so that the off tank has a chance to actually pick up all the adds. Otherwise, they're just going to start hitting players, and that's that's never good. And then healer thing, there's going to be a healing absorb that you'll have to heal through as well. Last altar, the Storm Altar. So when Kurog is close to this, the TLDR of this is you're going to have to pair up with another player that's debuffed. They're going to have an arrow over their head, or they're going to be shiny like this. They have a blue arrow, and then they're lightning shiny. And so we'll go over that in a second. And then there's big circles that need to be run away and small circles that need to be soaked. All right, so let's go over this one, Lightning Crash. So players are... also, I apologize. This boss just has so many mechanics. So you may need to rewatch this boss several times to pick up all these mechanics, and even then there might be some that you just kind of have to sight read on our first raid day because it's just mechanics vomit. There's so much. So I apologize if I'm going quick. So Lightning Crash is going to target several different players, and they're going to deal damage to the closest ally. So if you see somebody like this and you don't have a debuff, you need to go ahead and stand next to them to help share that damage. Now, if you share with somebody, you're going to get a debuff. You're going to get a stacking 30% nature damage vulnerability debuff, and that affects other mechanics throughout the fight as well. So you need to be careful. For example, if we started Storm and then we went to Frost after that, if you have that nature debuff and then you soak, if you soak these circles, if you're not using a defensive, it's very easy for you to die. So be aware when you have that debuff on you. Next one is Shocking Burst. So it's big circles. Treat these like the big purple circles for the 9. Just run it out. And then there's these soaks. So there's little circles with kind of a unique icon. Very pretty looking. You want to soak these. So everybody stands in one, and otherwise the group takes raid damage. You want to kind of treat these like Lady Enerva files. Soak them, otherwise you take big damage. Phase 2, so after Kurog hits 100 energy, he's going to go into the middle of the room and he'll become immune, and then he's going to spawn 2 adds, one for each of the different altars that you were at. So let's go over in order again, starting with Fire. So the Fire add is mostly just dodging the pools and kicking and killing the add. So you can see right here, he targets a player with a swirly, and it leaves a permanent pool and spawns an add. And you want to kick and kill the add as fast as possible. Frost ad. So the Frost ad is going to cast this freezing tempest, and it's cold, so you want to give him a hug. You huddle inside to avoid dying. So it's similar to, well, it's just its own thing. I was going to say it's similar to the 9. It is kind of. You want to get in and hug him so that you don't freeze to death when he casts that. Earth. So there's going to be big brown circles. Pretty simple. You just move them away and leave them there. And Storm. Storm is going to teleport to a random player and fixate this channel on them. And it's going to deal damage in a surrounding area to them. So you want to make sure that if you are the player that is fixated and teleported to, you move away so that you're not pulsing damage on the rest of the raid. So that's how the ads work. Again, they'll spawn based on the altars that you were standing at in Phase 1. Phase 3. So the order of the phases, it goes Phase 1, Phase 2. And then it does Phase 1 again, where you do the last 2 altars. Then it does Phase 2 again. After you kill those ads from the last 2 altars, then Phase 3 starts. And Phase 3 is pretty simple. It's just everything at the same time. So he gets all of the abilities from all the altars, and you lust and you kill him with all that. Something I forgot to mention, you never want to tank Kurog in the middle of the room. If you tank Kurog in the middle of the room, he gets a big ol' buff, and he'll wipe the raid very, very quickly. So always make sure that he is clearly at an altar. So what can kill you, this debuff that I was talking about. When you're pairing with players, you get a debuff. And so you can see right here, this player gets marked with a soak circle, and he's on top of this player that was marked with the partner mechanic. And so if he had stayed here, he would have killed this poor Dathea right here. So he thought on his feet, he jumped off to the side to avoid killing him. So I believe he also has the debuff, so that's why he died. Well, no, nobody helped him soak, so that's why. So if you have the debuff, you can soak, apparently, but you need to make sure you use a defensive cooldown. We're on to our last boss that we have strategy for. We don't have anything on Raszageth yet, so that'll come later. So Diurna. Diurna is lots and lots and lots and lots of ads and eggs. So the TLDR is this: you're going to move the boss around to different eggs, and she's going to cast something to make the eggs attackable. You want to kill them, ideally before they spawn anything, because the more ads that spawn, they do bad things. So you want to kill the eggs as fast as possible, and then beyond that, you want to kill the ads as fast as possible. There's going to be an extra action button on DPS and healers that you need to pay attention to, and you'll use that to break the eggs. And then there's different spread mechanics and stuff. Depending on how difficult this fight is, apparently you can split into multiple groups. So it says right here, you have 2 different options. You can either try to stack the ads and stuff like that on top of the boss and hard focus the ads, or if it's too difficult, because there's a mechanic here, you can actually take all the ads and stuff like that and have the off tank move it away from the boss. So let's look at this ability real quick. So there's an aura that increases the damage done of all of her allies, so the ads, by 50%, so they deal a lot of damage. They take 25% less damage, and they heal progressively, so they're hard to kill if they're near her. If you move them outside of 50 yards range of her, then I believe that buff from her goes away onto the ads. All right, let's take a look at this. So you can see she casts Rapid Incubation, where it'll target 2 nearby eggs, and those will have a ticking timer, kind of like the Halandris bombs. Those need to ideally be killed as fast as possible so that they don't hatch the eggs. The way that you break eggs is whenever she uses a staff ability, it's going to mark 2 players, and or maybe it's more than 2 players, but yeah, it looks like it's more than 2 players. When you get marked, you'll have an extra action button, and if you stand in between the boss and an egg and use the extra action button, it'll channel a beam. So you see right here, this player has an extra action button. They move to the outside of an egg and press it, and it channels a beam through the egg, and it breaks it. Now, when you break an egg, it triggers a big burst of damage, and also it's going to increase the damage of the next egg that breaks within that 10 seconds. So you want to stagger the egg breaks. If you break them at the same time, I might be lethal damage. I don't know yet, but it does a lot of damage to the raid. So we'll need to call when we're breaking eggs to make sure that we're not blasting two at the same time and taking huge raid damage. There's going to be red circles that are cast, so these need to be spread out. On heroic difficulty, it sounds like we need to spread earlier, actually, because if you wait until you see the red circles, it marks you with a dot, but if you're near somebody else that has a red circle as well, you'll get more dots. And so you want to go ahead and spread out, drop these, and then run out of the swirly that follows afterward. Ionizing charge. So you'll get marked with the purple arrow periodically, and if you have that, you just need to move away from the group because you'll pulse AoE damage around you. I can foresee a lot of melee DPS being greedy and causing problems, so don't be that guy. Spread out with the purple. Each of the ads does something different. We'll get to that in a second. There's one more thing. So these fire beams, these are very similar to like rotating Diablo style beams. So it adds extra stress to the fight. So just don't touch those. Very obvious. Okay, ads. Each of the ads does something different. So the frost proto-dragons, they're going to periodically deal damage to everybody, so they need to be killed quickly so that the raid stops taking damage, and you'll need to heal through that raid-wide damage. There's a lot of different ads that deal big tank damage, so the Legionnaire, the Earth Reaver, and the Stormbringer are all very dangerous to the tank. The Legionnaire he does a big hit on the tank. The Earth Reaver has an armor reducing debuff, so that stacks very dangerously with the Legionnaire. And finally, the Stormbringer casts an ability at the tank that must be kicked, otherwise they get stunned. And a stun on the tank is dangerous because that means they can't block or mitigate or dodge or whatever, and they'll take much more damage from these ads. So those need to be watched out for. And then the other ones, so the Mage and the Stormbringer are the big kick ones. They have things that can be kicked. And then the Flame Bender, it's on heroic only. He'll cast something that can be purged. So shamans, priests, whatever, purge it off. Demon hunters. And it sounds like the Frost Proto-Dragon is one of the least dangerous. It deals raid-wide damage. I'm not sure how that's tuned. And then it does do a massive tank hit with a stacking bleed. So yet another tank thing. So I foresee this being a big tank damage fight. Okay, phase 2. So you've broken all the eggs, or it's been 5 minutes, and she enters phase 2. At this point, if you get the extra action button, you want to either use it to break any remaining eggs, or you just want to run it away from players so that you're not killing your friends. There's still going to be the circles, so you'll have the red circles that you spread out with, and it has a swirly afterwards. This is something new. So Frozen Shroud still freeze the entire raid, and you either need to damage the ice to break it, or heal through the heal absorbs. So everybody has a job to do during that to break the ice and clear that route as fast as possible. And in that last phase, this is the lust phase, this phase 2, because the longer that she's alive, she'll deal more and more damage. So it's an enrage mechanic. And that is Vault of the Incarnates. I hope this was helpful for you. Again, there is a study guide here that I will link in the description of this video. It's open to anybody who would like it, and feel free to share it and this video if you find it helpful. And I'm personally going to have this on my second monitor for our first raid day, and just use these TLDRs as a quick reminder going into each fight, just to get my brain working on what each fight does. So Thank you so much for watching. Good luck in Vault of the Incarnates.